First, we'll call the April 28th, 2020 Power Board meeting to order, and we'll do a roll call. Sally Castleman, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, and Kunal, are you with us?
I am here.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Great. Ryan Jackson's here, Jeff Burkhart's here. Mayor Pitts, are you there?
I am here, Mr. Chairman.
All right, great. So we have a quorum, and we will proceed with the agenda. Did you have something you wanted to say first, Brian?
No.
All right. So the first agenda item is the March Power Board minutes. I assume everyone's had an opportunity to review those, and would entertain a motion to approve subject to any changes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Castleman, seconded by Mr. Burkhart. There's no discussion on the motion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. March monthly report. Is David with us?
Yes. What about the minutes from,
We just did the
I
minutes.
just did the minutes.
I'm behind. Mr. Chairman, go ahead and announce that we need to do this meeting, that the board finds that this meeting needs to be done through electronic means because of the COVID-19, and ask for a motion second to conduct the meeting and take a vote.
Okay, I've been advised by Mr. Baker that I should advise everyone that if we find it necessary to conduct this meeting through electronic means, and we're doing so because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I need a motion to approve doing that.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Jackson, seconded by Mr. Burkhart. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like
Aye.
sign. Motion carries. Now we'll do the March monthly report. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Yes, sir.
Okay, before I turn it over to David, a couple of things. We do need to add on to the agenda, at the end of the agenda, to go into executive session. So Lance and I could update the board on the letter we received yesterday. Also, so on the March report, I think one thing you're going to be seeing that kind of helped us a little bit is we actually peaked on, we're billed two peaks. We billed KW on on-peak demand and off-peak demand. And we peaked on a Saturday. And by peaking on that on a Saturday, we paid $3.04 per KW versus $7.31 per KW. So that saved us about $1 million on our power bill, which helped things through. So with that, David, I'll turn the financials over to you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Are you doing like we did last time, and you will follow along on your screen with the financials?
I will try my best, David. Yes, I have the
Okay.
financials, I have the balance
I'll
sheet.
try to be very descriptive. All right, I'll start with the balance sheet for the electric division for the month of March. And Brian's always happy to tell you all the good news. And so the good news reflected throughout these is that we did peak at a very low rate on a Saturday, and that's going to help our power costs. And we'll see the effects of that. Starting on the balance sheet, though, things to point out here. I'm sure you want to look about two-thirds of the way down to the cash. Cash is at $5.9 million. That's about $2 million less than last month. This is not a matter of concern at this time. That's just timing of when the bills come due for TVA, for what month usage and what's coming up. So we paid a bill for the usage in January and February in March, and that was a much higher bill than what has come up. Like Brian said, we peaked low. Our bill that we just paid, we're about to pay the 1st of May for March, will be just $8 million. So that's going to help our cash position out going forward. We still that account at the 14.1, almost 28 million in cash. So we're not concerned yet. When we look at the day sales and receivables, it's not spiking up yet, so people are still paying their bills as still March, which is just half a month with the COVID situation. April will be a full month, so that'll be interesting to look at next month. Are there any questions on anything on the asset side of the balance sheet?
David, you keep saying we're not concerned yet. Are you apprehensive or about what's coming?
I'm sorry. We're watching it like a hawk. We don't know the future, but we know people are going to have trouble paying their bills. That's why I'm not concerned yet. I don't know exactly how this is going to shake out, but we're in a good position still to be able to weather it.
Okay,
How many people have not paid? What's that number?
8,000.
8,000?
Do I know?
How many people have not paid?
Not paid.
It was 8,000 last week.
Yeah, and it's less this time.
Is it?
Yeah, I'll have an update, we'll go
Okay.
through that, when we talk about some call policies.
Okay.
But actually, there's 1.3 billion before us, we're a little 1.03 now. So we've had some to pay and the number has gone down, so, a little bit good. I'm sure that's what they spent their stimulus money on, was paying on it.
I'm sure.
Okay, David.
Okay, I'll move to the second page then, the liabilities and equity section for the electric division. Look at 34, please. Current year-to-date earnings is at 10.5 million. March was a very strong month, and it's because of that low peak. If net income were only cash immediately, we'd be in a great situation. But we have to wait for people paying for that to become cash. So that's going to be realized in the next couple of months. So that compares favorably, that 10.5 million to 1 year ago. We're ahead of the earnings for last year at this point. Not too much else to point out here, other than AP is down, line 46, the big driver there is the EVA bill, and that's a much lower bill that's come up. That we're about to pay. Are there any questions on any items on that?
Nope.
All right, I'm sorry.
I said no, there are no questions.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'll move then to the next one, which is the income statement, the revenues and expenses for the electric division. And there is to look at line 64. Revenues are down about 4%. That's in line with usage. Usage was down about 5% for the month. So power costs went down much more than 5%, and Brian already explained that to us. Because it go down so much. Other things to point out on here, not a whole lot. It's a normal month as far as the maintenance and operating expenses, unless you had any questions on any of those items. We will look then at line 98, net income for the month at 2.5 million compared to under 700,000 1 year ago. Are there any questions on the income statement? I'll move then to the cash flow statement, so you can see what drove the overall decrease in cash. Line by line on for the balance sheet and income statement accounts. If there are no questions on that, we'll look to the graphs and charts. The second chart, the day sales and receivables, this is something I'll be watching. And it actually went down a little bit this month, and the reason for that was last month had a receivable of $1 million in there for the broadband division, which isn't really a customer AR, it's an unusual situation. They were paying us at the end of the month, they extra paid on the loan a little bit early. So that's why that spiked last month. But this will be something we want to watch. If a lot of customers have increased trends of not paying their bill, this will trend upwards. So that will tell us the health of if we're collecting or not. Next is the operations trending. So you can see we are a cyclical industry. And we had a very low March usage. Monthly expense breakdown. when the power bill is so low, it's gonna be a lower percentage of the overall cost. So every dollar we spent this month, 71 cents went to TVA.
David, that 71 cents is about as low as I can recall.
Yes, sir. I think there might have been one time it was in the very low 70s that I can recall as well. So it's the gift that keeps on giving throughout the financials when we peak at the right time. And the final charts are the revenue and the kilowatt hours sold by class. You can see the usage was down about 5%, like I was saying. Finally is the cash and investment summary. You can see which accounts have our money. Were we to experience operating cash getting lower than we like, the good news is in that $22 million in reserved cash, $5 million of it's in CDs, which it's a little harder to get them out. You got to wait for them to mature. But the rest of those funds are in money markets, so we can pull that at any time. So we have that at our disposal should we need it.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question if you will entertain it.
Certainly.
David or Brian, is there a trigger for cash on hand where you would draw for reserves? Is there a percentage? Is there a formula that you follow?
Brian, would you like me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Okay. Mayor, it's not so much a complex formula or anything or a trigger. It's just something we watch cash daily, and we know what's coming generally. We'd like to be able, we know what the power bill will be. We know what we have prepaid, and I should mention we had $20 million prepaid to the TVA last month, which helps with the upcoming cash situation as well. But Mayor, it's really not a formula so much, it's just something we watch. We feel comfortable, as you can tell when you look at month to month, if we have around 8 to 9 million in there. That's where we feel best suited, if knowing everything else is paid.
Well, in spite of the virus and the economic conditions we're in, I think CD is performing really well.
I appreciate that. If there are no questions on the cash and investment summary, quickly I'll go over the calculations and ratios. For the bond covenants, we needed to have net revenue for the year of $6.7 million. We're at 10.5 right now. Our debt to equity ratio is at 35%. And there, that day sales and receivables is still under 25, which we'll be watching. The final report for electric is the TVA report, which is all the financial information you've just seen with additional usage information. Is there any questions on the TVA report or any of the electric reports? Okay, I'll move then to the broadband division balance sheet for the month of March 2020. You can see their first line is cash at $5.8 million, and that's after paying the $1 million we discussed on the interdivisional loan. Get the interdivisional loan below $6 million now. So that compares pretty favorably. It's just about $600,000 less than a year ago. And a year ago, they didn't make that $1 million payment this early. So that's the big thing to point out on their asset side of the balance sheet. On the liabilities and equity side, it's about halfway down. Year-to-date retained earnings, $2.9 million plus the $400,000 earned this month, puts them above $3 million for the year, $3.3 million for the year in earnings. So they had a very good month in March with revenue of $400,000. Are there any questions on any items on the balance sheet for broadband? I'll move into their income statement for the month of March. You can see operating revenues at $2 million, cost of programming at $730,000, which gives them gross revenue of $1.2 million. A couple of things to point out: general and administrative expense of $223,000. That was a little bit higher this month and a little bit higher last month. It was $232,000. And the thing that drives that and makes it change from month to month are the bad debt, what's sent to collection. So for each of these 2 months, we've got about $48,000 that were sent. The month of where it was 167 in January is only a couple of thousand. The month prior in December, when that total was 196,000, it was about 20,000 sent to collection. So that's what drives that number. Station apparatus expense is largely driven by the number of installs, which was down a little bit for this month, which is normal. It was also down this month 1 year ago. So that gave us a net income of $411,000. Are there any questions on the income statement for broadband?
Mr. Chairman, I've said it before and I'll say it again, broadband is doing really well. Great leadership as well as a great staff providing good customer service.
They really are. That may be the only thing that's positively impacted by the COVID-19 issue.
Good point.
By staying at home watching TV
They are.
or on the internet.
And the band
Yes, sir.
usage is up.
Yeah.
Is Christie on this call?
Yes.
Christie?
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, has our pay-per-view revenue increased significantly?
Just very little. We don't make a ton out of pay-per-view video on demand anymore because so many people choose to get those movies through Netflix and other sources. But they did release a lot of movies that would have originally been at this point in theaters, and obviously since theaters were closed, they went ahead and released those videos. So it did uptick a little bit, but not by much. It's one of those categories that probably as we start to shift away from a more traditional video service will be one of the first ones to go.
That's a question that would only be asked by somebody my age, I guess. Okay. Thank you.
The joke write themselves, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon me?
I said the joke just write themselves.
My final my final financial statement for broadband then is the cash flow statement. So you can see what drove the increase in cash or the decrease in cash for the month for them. And it was mostly the payment of long-term debt, which was in their accounts payable. They'd already moved it there. The final report for us then is the monthly variance report that was sent to TVA. Increase in internet customers of 128. And I know I've said this a million times, but we would like the internet best. And like the chairman said, this is really helping us the situation on the internet side. People are using the internet. And with that, that's all of my report, unless there are any questions about it.
Are we using the same photo, how much for cutoffs as far as internet? Video, I understand, but for the internet with the kids in school and stuff, were we kind of giving them a little leeway on their bills?
No, we're doing no disconnects on all broadband or all electric.
So it's all across the board.
But, yeah, across the board. Because we can't, it's the way we bill it, we can't really separate it out once it's on the
Right.
bill. And I know, like I said, FCC, the driving force was internet, but we just can't separate things out. So we just discontinued.
I mean, that's good. I mean, I just think, at least till the kids get through school, I mean, I think we can look at that.
And didn't the federal government encourage not to do that?
The federal government, the state
Yeah.
and federal have encouraged us on electric not to disconnect, and then as well as internet, and then FCC as well has encouraged us not. So we're following suit with what all utilities are doing across the nation.
Okay. All right, thank you, David. I will entertain a motion to approve the March monthly report.
Motion for approval.
Burkhart makes a motion for approval.
Second.
Mr. Jackson seconded. Is there discussion on that? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Pose like sign. Motion carries. Personnel Committee report.
Okay, on Tuesday, last Tuesday, the 21st of April, the Personnel Committee met, and we're in attendance were myself and Wayne Wilkinson. We met with Brian and Privet. Sally Martina was there to take the administrative notes, and Kunal was not able to attend. So the following issues were voted on and were approved for recommendation to the Finance and Budget Committee for approval. The first item were 5 new position requests, 5 for full-time and 1 for a conversion from part-time to full-time. Those position requests were a warehouse materials management tech, a business analyst in IT, a fiber line worker, 2 premise installation techs for broadband, and the part-time to full-time conversion was in HR for a safety attendant. To move on to the payroll proposal that goes along with the changes, on the projected 2021 projected payroll was $12,954,031 million. The new salaries, the cost is $255,466, and the proposed salary adjustments was $582,931. Which brings us to a new payroll at $13,536,962.77. Of course, that includes the new salaries that I just listed above, and it also includes the salary adjustment at 4.5% for performance-based pay and step increases, equity increases, and general increases. This is a budget amount. It's not, there's no guarantee that all of this will be used. So that total reflects a 5.69% payroll increase over last year's budget. So that's what I have as a report from the Personnel Committee. If there are any specific questions, I'll probably refer you to Privet or Brian.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
a couple of things. Going forward, could we get those reports in writing so I won't have to sit here and feverishly scribble down numbers and maybe get something? And secondly, is that current fiscal year or is that proposed new fiscal year? Or the salary
That's
numbers?
the new fiscal year. That's not this year.
Proposed.
Proposed, yes. And I might add that means there's no across-the-board pay raises included in this budget. It's strictly for, like we have an apprentice program, we have several of our folks that go through apprentice programs, so it allows for those, the step raises and then any performance-based pay that we would have. But there is, this year we are not doing any general wage increase. And we can, we will send you, we can send you a memo on summarizing this, Mayor.
Well, yeah, Mayor, I apologize for that not being in the in there, but we've got hard copies of all that data, and we'll get that over to you this morning.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so is Sally, are you going to make a motion to approve?
Yes,
The
I will. I'll
recommendation.
make a motion to approve the new position request as just discussed and the proposed payroll change for 20 to 21.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Jackson seconded. Do we have further discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And thank you, Sally. Next agenda item is the Budget and Finance Committee recommendation. Mr. Jackson.
Yes, we met, I guess it was last Wednesday. The budget group consisted of myself and Wayne and Jeff. Met with Brian, David, and Sally was here as always. And had a good meeting, went through the budget pretty well, line item by line item, and you have in front of you the figures that final numbers. The electric division ended up with a decrease actually of $1,714,500 over the last year's budget. I don't know whether you want to do these both at the same time or have to have separate motions or not, or
It's your preference.
Yeah, I think we can take them all. If there's no objection, we'll take them all in one motion.
then the, excuse me, the broadband budget did increase almost the same amount as the electric division decreased. It increased to $1,467,533. Of course, we can expect that to happen with the growth and turnaround that it's had, and keeping up with this costly technology that's staying on the front end of that we have to do if we're going to be in that business. But as always, Brian and David did a good job of trimming things before it was presented to us, and the budget committee, on behalf of the budget committee, if there are any questions, we'd be glad to answer those. If not, we'd like to make a motion that we approve those two budgets as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Jackson, seconded by Mr. Burkhart. Is there a discussion on budget motion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Ronnie, for that, and we will move on to the budget, to the operating policies pertaining to COVID-19. And there are 6 of them.
Okay.
And probably take all those in one motion.
It's the chair.
Yeah, if there's no objection.
Okay, and I'll say back on the budget, we've had a broadband business plan that we've had in place for some time. Early on, it was a requirement of TDA to do that. And then we've hired a consultant to run that business plan, and then David has actually taken that over and kept it up to date and been spot on with his projections. So we've been doing a 5-year plan and coordinate with TVA on the electric side. But this year, David and I have been working on actually a 10-year rolling plan on electric as well, so that we can manage cash better. So both budgets were based on business plans and forecasts that we had in place for not just this year, but for multiple years, so that we can work towards building our cash back up. So with the COVID-19 policies, TVA regulates all of the things that we do with customers. And anything this board might approve has to go to TVA regulatory for their approval, and it's called service practice standards. TVA wrote a letter a while back giving us some flexibility during COVID-19, understanding that we may have to move a little quicker and react. And they have given us some lenience on some local control, but anything that we put in the way of customer service items needs to be put into a policy and then approved by regulatory on the back end of it. So policy 1 is our termination of service policy, which is the initial one that we said we would not disconnect from services from March 17 on to the end of the month. The policy 1A is our request to extend that not disconnecting for non-pay through the end of May. And the reason that, and what I've had showed up right here is just kind of a summary of some things so you get an idea on numbers. We're getting there's a lot of pressure on us not to disconnect on electric or broadband. And there's been a group called the Appalachian Voices that have been putting a lot of stuff over on the internet, and they know what all of us are doing. The state Public Utilities Commission made an order that utilities do not disconnect for non-pay, and while they don't govern us, we were kind of paid attention to that. There is language and talk going on about a fourth bill from Congress, and they're expecting maybe it would get voted on before Memorial Day. And there is some language in that bill that would tie state money to utilities not disconnecting services as long as until the president declares that the emergency no longer exists, plus 120 days. So APPA, NRECA, and TVA are all trying to make Congress aware of how detrimental that would be, or trying to get money to the utilities some way, somehow. Federal government did pass a bill that added another $900 million to the low-income energy efficiency program, LIHEAP. So our community action agency should be getting additional funding for helping people pay their bills. We've been doing a weekly survey of the municipals across the valley. That includes Tennessee and parts of Mississippi. And that survey there, just that 63 of the utilities have suspended disconnects for non-pay, and 12 have not. And those 12 were the ones in Mississippi and that. But and then I provided an update kind of where we were. Where we had 8,000 from March, April, a week ago. We had 8,000 customers that had not paid and $1.3 million. Then on broadband, it was 2,000 and $205,000. As of yesterday, we're down to 5,743 customers, but still over $1 million in outstanding balances. And then broadband customers were down to 1,910 and 177,549. My reasoning for let's go on and wait till the end of May to start disconnect for non-pay is this pending. I would hate for us to start disconnecting for non-pay and do it for a week or 2 weeks, and then the federal government mandate that we stop. It looks bad that we started back and then they stop again. And we won't know that until, probably not until after Memorial Day on that. I think the Public Utility Commission's initial plea on this was they were going to suspend disconnects until May the 18th. And so on our call yesterday with TVA, some LPs that originally had said they were going to start disconnects again May 18th. The majority were waiting until June 1st to do disconnects. And after we got an update from Washington, the Washington folks about this pending language, many of them are backing off now and going to hold up on disconnects. So our recommendation would be to continue with holding off and suspending disconnects until the end of May. And
Right now, it looks like, if I'm reading that correctly, with our TVA bill going down $1 million, we're really cash. We're still even. People owe us $1 million. We got $1 million off our bill.
yeah.
So right now, we're not out any cash as far as.
We don't have a lot of exposure yet.
Exactly. So I see you keep going and maybe we'll,
I do think the longer it goes, the harder it's gonna be.
sure.
But if there's additional LIHEAP money coming in, we'll talk about TVA's program where we've got matching funds coming in. We're gonna do a fundraiser it's only, CEE can raise, if we can raise $25,000, TVA will match the 25, that's 50,000 that would go to community action. We're gonna partner with United Way here in the next week to do a fundraiser on that. I'll talk about that a little bit when we get to the TVA thing. So we're hoping that there's more money coming to help folks with their utility bills. So far, all the money that's outflowing from Washington is going to other people, not going to municipal electric systems. But we're okay. I think we're okay right now. I think, again, our biggest fear, and as we talked yesterday, the biggest fear is you start back disconnecting, and then somebody comes back in and says stop, and then it looks like, why did you even start on that? So that's policy one that we would do. Policy two is dealing with suspension of late fees. And we have not suspended putting on penalties. Now, we have suspended the $30 disconnect fee. We're not applying that $30 disconnect fee, but we are still applying the 5% penalty. Now, customers, we have a policy in place. If it's the first time you've ever been on the cutoff list, we can waive that penalty. But once a year, you can have one penalty waived if you're a good paying customer. And we've kind of had put that in place years ago. So everybody makes a mistake. Everybody has something that happened. They're in the hospital or there's something they forget a bill. So we think through the first month, we're okay on waiving the fees, but we would say beginning May 1 going forward, we would waive those penalties. And as a reference, and the utilities are pretty well split on that. You can see 35 utilities have waived penalties, late fees, and 40 have not. As of yesterday, we have applied penalties this month to 19,000 customers. That would be a cost of $137,000 that we would be, basically waiving off if we do that. There is a lot of, again, pressure around the nation that we not only waive disconnects, but also waive late fees. The other school of thought, though, is as long as you're still applying late fees, you might encourage those that can pay to go on and pay. So we need to, look at that, but we thought we would bring this to the board for discussion and thoughts on that. And so the plan would be to start waiving late or penalties beginning May 1st, going through the end of this. The next policy, policy 3, is dealing with partial payments. So today, we do have partial payment policy in place, but we give them 7 extra days to pay the bill. So clearly, 7 extra days is not going to help a lot of folks. So we have a policy in place, not knowing how long this will go on, is we're going to give them a base of 3 months to pay, and then we'll give them a month for every month they're behind. So every month that we have suspended disconnects. If we suspended disconnects for 2 months, they will actually have 5 months to pay their bill. On a APPA call that I was on, and folks outside the valley, and there's a push in Congress as well, is to make payment arrangements for over 12 months or longer. So I think this is something a bit long, further out than what we have today, and something we can work with. I do know that I shared this policy with some other LPCs in the Middle Tennessee area, and several others were taking this to their board, to this policy to the board today. And And so nobody that I have talked to in the valley is going past 6 months. Or they're doing this right here based on how long we do it. So right now, if we go back to disconnects in June, then that would give everybody 5 months payment arrangements
If you went to the 12-month plan, and the only chance you take, I guess, is somebody moving, disconnect. I assume that would be placed on their last bill.
If somebody files out, then the payment arrangement goes away and it's due in its entirety. So it would be on that final do that. And
I favor the 12 months. I know nobody else is doing it out there much, but, you know, it doesn't, somebody's got to lead from the front, I guess. And I feel like that's the right thing to do. There's a lot of people out there who are pretty bad shape. None of us in this room know that, but some people out there are not as blessed as we are. I'd be fine with going 12 months on payment plan. So,
What does that do to our cash flow?
well, Ms. Long, I mean, right now, we're looking at $1 million, will probably be $2 million. You probably think about maybe, if we do it, start back in June, let's say we start back in June, then it would be about $2 million that we would be dealing with, spreading out. And that's an impact, but not something we can handle. We can handle that. And again, I think once people know we're going to start disconnecting and that the end of the road is coming, then I think some folks will start coming in to pay. And so we don't want to put a big push on talking about when we're doing disconnects again, so I feel here from Washington. We're hoping nothing happens, and we're not mentioned in it, but they have not been able to kill the language right now. And a lot of folks in Congress always think about not public power, they think about investor-owned, that the PG&Es, the Dukes, they have a lot of big pockets in that. So their APPA and NRC are trying to explain to them there's a lot of small utilities that are on tight budgets. You know, the co-ops, not maybe some in Tennessee, I know in Mississippi, some of the co-ops, they have a line of credit every month to pay the power bill. They have no cash flow, you know, at all. So they're hurting in a lot better shape than we are.
I think one of the things that are a blessing to us is I know I'm in real estate business, so Wayne, and I know Ryan does a lot of stuff. We can't build it fast enough. And I know y'all are feeling it. I mean, whatever we're building is sold, and that just adds to our monthly cash flow, and more money we make it. I feel like we're probably in one of the better, we're probably sitting in the catbird seat compared to a lot of places.
We've talked before, a lot of the utilities, you look at utilities in West Tennessee, they're losing customers. They have negative growth, and so we are seeing per customer less usage, but it's hidden on us because we're growing so fast, right? I mean, I think we're okay on cash right now. Some of the things we got along. I'm open to whatever the board would want to do. We were trying to build something flexible, but not carry it out too far. But we could make 12 months work.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see us look at the 12-month option that Councilman Burkhardt just mentioned. It's generous to think in the example 5 months, but if you're behind by a couple of months, those couple of months are pretty high bills, then that's a pretty steep hill to climb.
I mean, as long as we can handle it from a cash flow standpoint, I'm all right with it. I do think the only negative to it is we'll see probably an increase in the amount of money that we're not gonna be able to collect because of people moving or whatever. That 12 months for a transient community like ours is a long time.
And that's the issue the only issue that I have is because we are so transient. And because of the way we cut off and we're all on one bill, whatever we see, we do here is for electric and broadband both. It's very hard to separate the two because we do bill everything in one bill. So understand what we decide will be for both services on that.
Well, folks are gonna remember how we treated our customers during this time. The good, honest, hardworking folks out there, not those deadbeats that don't pay their bills, but the people who struggle to pay their bills. They're gonna remember how we treated and worked with them. I can guarantee you the other two companies providing broadband in our community could give a rat's tail about them.
You know, we know that. So would that be an amendment to this particular?
We could add an amendment to this, to policy 3, and then we will make that adjustment to policy 3.
Okay.
Does that have to be approved by TVA?
All of these, we're going to approve them today, and TVA actually in this case has said we can move forward with it. They're going to put it on the back end. So they've given us they've given us the guidelines as to what policies we can put in place, as long as they're non-discriminatory and they're in these categories. They are going to approve about anything we present to them, but they do have to see it. And so, unlike our normal service practice standards, once you all approve it, I think we're good to go. But I will pass these along to TVA. We are meeting with regulatory weekly. We have on a weekly call. Regulatory's on that, and we're talking about these type of things. And they have pretty much approved anything that we have offered out so far. So I'm confident we'll be okay with regulatory.
Need to put an amendment on that?
Yeah, let's, and I'm just trying to think if we should do it now, and because we're going to vote on all these at one time, or if when we get ready to take the vote on all of them, if you make that amendment at that time.
That's fine. We have to amend.
Let's do that.
Number 3 with it.
Number 3.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
That'll
Okay.
just get easier. All right.
Can I interrupt for just a second? Just a reminder for those in this room, if we can speak up, I'm getting messages that it's hard to hear. So just speak up, please.
Okay, let's all speak like we're yelling at our spouses. So what we're doing, if you can hear me, Sally, Canal, and Mayor, we're going to amend policy 3, but we'll deal with that at the end of the presentation where we vote on all of the policies at one time.
Okay, so,
I work, sure.
Really clear. And Jeff, I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that's a very positive amendment.
all right, I will go on to policy 4, it's a prepayment program. So this is our pay-as-you-go for those folks that pay a little bit at a time. And they maybe $20 at a time, and as they start getting low on electricity, we'll send them a text message or an email, and they have to put some more in there. Well, our current policy to go on a prepay, most people that go on prepay have a bad debt or an outstanding balance. They must pay 50% of that outstanding balance, and then for every dollar they pay, that going forward, 50 cents go to the current bill, 50 cents goes to the past due bill. To make it a little easier for them to get on prepay, we're going to reduce the 50% payment option. They only require to pay 10% of that past due bill. So if they owe $1,000, they pay $100. And then going forward, every dollar they spend, 50 cents goes to their current usage and 50 cents will go to the prior usage, just as it does today. The thing is, with a prepaid program, pay-as-you-go, we're we're not waiting 30 days to get payment. We're getting it as they go lower usage. So we're not going in the hole on these customers anymore. So I like this program better than the payment arrangements if we can get people on it. So, so we're reducing that from 50% down to just pay 10%. The next policy is Code Policy 5, dealing with minimum bills. And so these are with our GSA 2 and GSA 3 accounts. And we have about 713 of those accounts. Those are, our GSA 2 accounts are those that use 60 kW to 1,000 kW. And then the GSA 3 is from 1,001 kW up to 5,000 kW. So we know that churches and restaurants and some other folks had to close down. And so based on that service agreement, they will pay either their current billing demand or 20% of their highest billing demand or 20% of their contract demand. And we calculate that every time we bill a commercial account. And since those folks, we did a study here based on last month's numbers. If those restaurants and churches reduce their usage by 40% that month, how many people would go into a minimum bill situation, and what would it do to them? And for us, typically on a full revenue, we would have gotten out of those 700, or just those customers that were affected, we would have got $1.1 million. If they reduce it by 40%, we're looking at $560,000. So we will see a reduction in there. That's a gross revenue. That's not the net of the wholesale in that. So what we're proposing to do, and I think this would be a good faith effort on those folks, is to not do the minimum bill calculation and bill them their actual usage. And so on the second page, I have just 3 samples. And if we did that, we approved it based on February's numbers, CD would be out about $11,000. It's not a lot of money, but I think it's, what I would want to do is write a letter to each of the customers that had a minimum bill, and we waived that minimum bill. And so what we're looking at here is, so typically that they bill 62.4 kW, and then their energy, so rate schedule at 1,842. But their highest KW ever in the preceding 12 months was 157.8. So that ended up being we take 20% of that. So the reduced meter KW was 37.4. That's based on their usage was just 40%. So if we build them a minimum bill situation, they're billed the 20% of that 157 at the higher block of the KW. They're not billed any KWH on that minimum bill. But minimum bill, their bill would be $610. If we billed them at their reduced usage 40% at their true bill, they would have been billed $412. So this is the largest one that we had. So there's a difference of $198. So we would go ahead and bill them the $412 and then write them a letter stating that we actually bill them $610, do an adjustment on their account for $198, and then write them a letter letting them know we waived their minimum bill for this month. And so it's not a lot of money, but I think it's a good gesture for those folks that had to close down. I just did. Now, Hilldale has several accounts. Not all their accounts went into minimum bill situation. Parks and Rec, not all their bills went into minimum bill. And then also the school system, not all theirs went into minimum bill either. But this is just a sampling of a couple of accounts that would be affected. I will say the majority of LPCs are doing this, waiving that minimum bill. TVA has a new plan in place for waiving minimum bills for Part B customers. Now, this money here, none of it goes to TVA. It's all stays with CDE. So it's not going to cost us anything up to TVA for doing this. But Part B customers, TVA has some skin in the game. So they have come out with a policy on waiving Part B. I'll talk about that in a minute. So if we looked at February's usage, everybody went down 40%. It was about $11,000 that we would have forgiven in that. But I think by writing a letter to the customers, those that had to shut down, I think it's a very good gesture to do.
We're doing this 1 month,
We would do this until until they open back up, or until we, I would say when we start doing, all of this is triggered on when we start doing disconnects again. So June 1, this would do this, this month and next month. June 1, we would go back to normal, assuming we're back to normal.
But the policy also says that it can be extended, but it has to come back to the board.
So it's geared towards, based on the trigger of disconnects for non-pay, which will be June 1, so everything, all these would go out of effect except for the sick leave one, would go out to June 1, and this would come back to the board. And then this COVID policy 6, sick or unable to work, we talked before about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. That is a federal legislation that's dictating how we handle sick leave and family medical leave. And in this policy, it states that we need to have a policy that reflects that we are following the federal guidelines. So this policy, rather than try to update our current sick leave policy, we've made a separate policy. And this policy duplicates what the federal act mandates that we follow. And so there's nothing really different in that. But we do need a policy in place for that. So those are 6 policies that we have put in at this time. That I will say we're working on another policy dealing with waiving credit card fees for our online payments and our kiosk. We have not been able to come to terms. We thought we had an agreement with our vendor, but we haven't been able to come to terms on pricing with our vendor. And so we're still working on that. If we are able to come to terms, something that we think we can handle and it makes sense, we may call a special board meeting to take up that subject. But we do not have that in place today, but we are looking at that. And there were some upfront fees, and then they did not come down on the price that we thought they had talked about in the past. So I would just say we're working on that, and we may have to call a special call meeting to talk about that. Those are the 6 policies that we would like to present to the board today.
Okay. If there's no objection, we're going to take in one motion policies 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll come back to 3 in a moment. So the chair will entertain a motion to approve COVID-19 operating policies 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. So motion made.
Second.
And properly seconded. Is there discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose like sign. Motion carries. Now we'll take COVID operating policy 3. I'll need to do a motion and then a motion to amend. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Going forward, we'll be doing roll call votes. I would entertain a motion to approve COVID-19 operating policy 3. Jeff has approved that, made a motion to approve. Is there a second? And just so there's no confusion, once we get this on the floor, then we'll go back and deal with the amendment.
Second.
Okay, motion made, seconded. Is there a discussion on the motion?
I'd like to make an amendment to spread out the late payments over a 12-month period. And I don't know how that needs to be worded exactly, but I think you know what we talked about.
We got the intent, we'll
Okay.
make sure it
Okay.
meets the intent, the language meets the intent.
So there's a motion to amend operating policy 3 to spread late payments out over a 12-month period. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Okay, Sally's made a second to the amendment. Is there discussion on the motion as amended? If not, gonna take a roll call vote for approval. All those in favor, Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Burkhart,
Aye.
Ms. Castleman,
Aye.
Mr. Shaw.
Aye.
Okay. So there are 4 in favor. Anyone opposed? Obviously not. So the motion as amended passes. The amendment passes. Now we'll take the motion as amended and a roll call vote. Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Mr. Burkhart,
Aye.
Ms. Castleman,
Aye.
Mr. Shaw.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion as amended passes. Moving on to agenda item G, contracts and professional services.
Mr. Chairman, before you move on, may I offer a comment?
Certainly.
I want to say thank you to Brian and Privet and the staff for coming up with these policies. I think they were very forward thinking and forward looking, and I think they reflected our market and the market they serve. So I just want to say thank you for the details, for the work they put into that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for that comment. I know we all agree with that. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and it's way above my pay grade. So, moving on to contracts and professional services. Iris.
Yeah, okay, so the first one is Iris, and we know that we talked to them about, that's our bandwidth provider, and one of our bandwidth providers. We talked previously about trying to get on their network, but the pricing was just not something we wanted to bring to the board. Christy has continued to work with Iris, and she has built a really strong relationship with the folks with Iris. They want to do business with us, and we want to do business with them. So we think we've come up with something that's going to help us all out. And I'm going to let Christy go through the slides and the presentation. And Christy, I'll try to follow along with the slides.
Thank you, Brian. If you'll go to the second slide there. These wonderful colored lines, basically, in a nutshell, less complicated and technical is that you'll see where CD is located there. You'll see the 2 orange lines going to Spencer, Tennessee, and then Nashville, Tennessee, and that would be our primary connection for Iris, with our focus being in the Spencer area, because of course our other 100 gig connection is housed in Nashville. If at any point that we lose connectivity to Spencer, it would in turn fail over to that other orange line to Nashville. If at any point that line from Nashville was damaged by storm or whatever, we would still have a backup connection to Nashville through Spencer via the purple line of fiber. Both of those connections, Nashville and Spencer, would also have fiber paths for failover to Atlanta and to Chicago. So essentially what this ring means, and it doesn't look like a ring, but it technically is a ring. What this ring means for us is that at any point we have multiple failover options if any piece of fiber is damaged during the storms or any construction or anything else that we have dealt with. Brian, if you go on to the next slide, please. And again, as I said, this is the ringing. It would actually build this ring. You can see there the turquoise line is the actual fiber connection path to Spencer, Tennessee, with the hard failover to Nashville if need be. None of these fiber paths would follow the same path that we have. It would be on separate fibers than the path that we have to CenturyLink today in Nashville. We'll go to the third slide, Brian, and the next slide. What we currently have with ours now is that Dallas, Texas connection that we suffered through, the cuts in Memphis and then the cuts in Austin, Texas that took us out at the same time that our primary connection in Nashville was out. Our connection to Nashville, of course, has been reestablished. The connection to Dallas has been reestablished. However, it is a very long connection. It is on fiber that is not owned by IRIS. And what separates this plan from the Dallas plan is that this fiber is actually owned by IRIS and it's their fibers to maintain. Since we reestablished both the Nashville connection and the Dallas connection, we've had 2 more cuts to that connection in Dallas that took us out for multiple days. Most of those in the Memphis area, again, due to construction. Our customers nor anyone else really even knew that those things happened. We knew internally at CDE that it happened, but our customers didn't know it happened because the Nashville connection was up and going. But based on what we know happened after the tornadoes in Nashville, we don't want to put ourselves at that risk any longer. When we originally talked with IRIS, and I had originally mentioned this at that special call board meeting after those massive outages, their original proposal was a $650,000 upfront investment to be part of that ring, and then a monthly recurring cost of $46,000. And that was really that $650,000, albeit we were in the financial situation where we manage it, just did not look prudent business sense for us based on what we would garner from it. As Brian mentioned, we've built a really strong relationship with ours. They really want to be a partner with us. They really want to make us a part of their ring network, which is essentially unheard of. They typically only use that for people that have invested in their company and that are providers of services that are part of their consortium. They come back to us with a new proposal, and it is a 40 gigabit connect, very similar to exactly what we have in Dallas today. The initial investment would be $175,000, a very significant decrease in the cost for that. And then the monthly recurring charges would be $42,400. And it's broken out there by area as to how much each of those would cost us. It would be a 16-month term, and it would in turn replace our Dallas connection. So the Dallas connection would go away completely. We'd move to the Spencer, Tennessee connection, and then we would have that term and actually only be paying. Today we pay about $38,000 a month for the Dallas connection. Our monthly cost would only go up a little over $4,000 for the additional connection, but it also gives us all of that redundancy and that failover. Does anyone have any questions about any of this?
So, Chrissy, so that's about a $48,000 a year increase in cost, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And this last slide just kind of goes over all of the different reasons that CDE and IRIS want to continue to maintain this partnership.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
And the second is just the agreement that we would go on with this line.
Well, personally, knowing what we went through, I guess that was the first part of March when all that occurred.
Correct.
To have that redundancy, I think is worth the additional cost.
It's $4,000 a month. I mean, you gotta do it.
Yeah, because competitors just beat us up over
And there's-
it. Plus, we just need,
Well,
we
there's
got people.
so much flexibility
Yeah.
by being on that ring. But you're right. It's think if we would be down today with everybody working
Oh,
from
yeah.
home.
Yeah, I believe. Would entertain a motion to approve contract with Iris Networks.
So moved.
Motion made by Ms.
Second.
Burkhart, and I think Ms. Councilman,
I second it, yes.
right, okay. All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Mr. Burkhart,
Aye.
Ms. Councilman,
Aye.
Mr. Shaw. Mr. Shaw? Okay,
Yes.
okay. So the motion carries unanimously. Unclaimed property.
Okay, this is our annual resolution where we send people that leave us with credit balances, small credit balances, or we try to refund the money we can't. We turn that money over to the state. And then after a period of time, we'll go back and request whatever they were not able to disperse out or find owners for, we ask for that money back. They send us the balance back, less processing fees. So that's money that we put back on our books and we can use. Although, if somebody were to come out and claim that money, that we still owe it to that customer. So we're requesting the 2018 amount. So that would have been the balance of it. There's $14,827.84. That's what we sent to the state, and so whatever they have not dispersed out, we would be requesting that back from the state. And we have just a spreadsheet here that's kind of historically what we've done as far as sending money to it. It's not large balances that we're sending to the state and collecting, but it is money that we're going to get back from the state. So we would be this resolution requests the 2018, the balance of the amount that we sent in 2018, and we originally sent $14,827.84. We do not know what that balance will be at this time. And that's the resolution.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion for the unclaimed property resolution.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Jackson,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Burkhart. And we'll do roll call vote on this as well. Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Mr. Burkhart,
Aye.
Ms. Castleman,
Aye.
Mr. Shaw.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. TVA uplift.
Okay, go to the one pager on that. So TVA Uplift is a new program that TVA is putting out, helping low-income families to do energy efficiency projects at their home. This is something that we're putting into the budget for next year. We would not roll it out until next year, but we'd like to go ahead and get approval. And the way it would work is TVA's matching dollar for dollar of what we would spend. They say about $8,000. They spend about $8,000 per home, and so we would budget. We're putting in $40,000 of CDE money, and then TVA would match $40,000. So that would be the max we could end up doing during the year would be about 10 homes. And so I think this is a goodwill effort that we can go out and address some of the low-income housing. And from our folks and talking to TVA, for us, 10 homes would be about what we could handle in each year anyway. So I'd be glad to answer any questions on this.
Who determines who qualifies for this? Is it first come, first served?
There is a enrollment program that will be done, and TVA is working on the plan that they'll make the determination as to do it. It would be a first come on that. And we try to be out of the selection or award part of it.
And how do we advertise or market this or make the public aware that this?
We would probably do one as a press release, which we haven't had a lot of luck with Lee Chronicle printing anything we send to them, but mainly probably be social media is what we end up doing, is what we rely on now. And TVA will be doing some promotions throughout the area as well.
Did you say TVA is the one that chooses?
I believe what we
Okay,
have,
sorry,
there's going to be a
our
third,
candidate.
will there be a third party that chooses
Yes.
that.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the TVA uplift program?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Castleman, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Jackson seconded the motion. We'll do a roll call vote on this. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Burkhart?
Aye.
Ms. Castleman?
Aye.
And Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Finally, AVL.
Okay, this is through a company called Clevist that they have a partnership with DAFRON, our billing system, and Data Voice, which is our mapping system. As you know, we have an AVL system that we just used with our radios. It puts a chip in the radios and we can locate where our vehicles are during a storm. During the October storm is when we really used it quite and relied on it quite heavily. We really discovered that it was not updating that quickly. So we thought the truck was in a certain place and that truck had already moved somewhere else. And so while we know how many crews we have on our system during that time. So while we still do radio calls and verify where everybody is, it's really good, and another safety thing is to let our dispatchers and everybody know on that big screen where our trucks are. Clevist has been somebody that we've been looking at for some time, but we thought we'd try the radio method first, and it's has not panned out. So what we're doing is a phased-in approach with this. We'll go into agreement with Clevist, and I think we're doing 21 vehicles this year. And we'll kind of phase that in, and that will get all of our operations vehicles with the ABL so we can track where they are and that. So now, the caveat on this right now is Bruce is still working with the company on the contract. We don't even have it cleaned up well enough to send to Lance, but we're wanting to try to get a board approval, pending Lance's approval on it, so that we can try to get this purchased before the end of the budget year. So if you make a motion to approve, it would be pending legal approval on the contract.
Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to enter into an agreement with Clevis Solutions subject to review and approval by Mr. Baker.
So moved.
Mr. Jackson made the motion.
Second.
Mr. Burkhart seconded the motion. And we'll do a roll call vote on this. Mr. Jackson.
Aye.
Mr. Burkhart.
Aye.
Ms. Castleman.
Aye.
And Mr. Shaw.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we'll move into purchase requests.
Okay, the first item for review is just transformers, 60, 25 kVA transformers, and this is just replenishing stock. The next one, larger process access points. That is all of our wireless connectivity inside the building. And with the addition of the new building, we are bringing in additional access points to give coverage, Wi-Fi coverage throughout the building. And really with the new latest security features, we're actually replacing all of our access points throughout this building with the same model, the same type. And it will add a little bit of extra security to our system as well. The next invoice is for Telvent, a Telvent invoice. Bruce, did you have additional information on this?
Yes, sir. This is some work that Telvent did for us, installing and training on their fiber manager. It's actually some work that had to be done for the contract that we approved back in February to actually convert our fiber data over to the Telvent software.
So we use Telvent and I think Snyder for our electric mapping system. And we've been using AutoCAD for the broadband mapping, and we're converting all the broadband maps to the fiber maps over to Snyder as well. So they'll be all in the same mapping system with multiple layers. Anything else, Bruce, on that?
No, sir. I think that covers it.
Okay, those are our purchase.
Brian, did you skip one? Did you skip one? Did you skip the firewall?
Yes.
Firewall, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Sally. The firewall is upgrading our existing firewall to a new platform, and again, added security. It is $80,541, but it also has additional security features in our current firewall product that we have. So this protects us from the outside world. Thank you, Simon. Okay, that's the purchase. I'd be glad to answer any questions on those.
Okay. Operating policy 2-1.
Okay, operating policy 2-1, fuel cost went down a little bit. So an average bill went from $129.30 to $129.10, and that reflects 23% lower fuel cost than the 3-year average. So, and we're hoping, we're remains to be seen, we're hoping April fuel costs will be down as well with a lot of businesses and industrial customers that have been closed.
Okay. Management report.
Okay, management report. Just our folks right now, we are still working, if in the office, 50% of the folks are in the building, 50% are working from home. Outside operations are working as is with staggered start times, and crews are supposed to be independent, not talking to each other and trying to stay separate. Fiber guys are not congregating when they come in to get their work as well. We're still doing broadband installs, going inside people's house, but just doing that so as safe as we can. Everybody has their PPEs that they look at. We are working with, we're working with APPA, and there's part of APPA is the electricity subsector coordinating council. We've been working on a COVID-19 back to work plan. And we've actually, we've sat in on several of those meetings, and Keith Cutshaw is our representative on that committee. But we were working on a multi-phase approach as to how we're going to start back to normal and open up the lobby. We would like to leave the lobby closed for right now, and we are looking at and we're shooting hard, and we think we're going to hit it, but the Tuesday after Memorial Day, which will be our board meeting day, our next board meeting will be in the new boardroom as the plan. Hopefully we'll be in person at that one. And we would like to just go ahead and hold off opening up the lobby until that Tuesday. I want the lobby open back up before we start disconnects from on-pay. But it will help us move a little. Now that we're closed, it will help us in the move a little bit. And quite honestly, we're going through the governor's reopening the Tennessee pledge, his documents on things that we need to do to open. And one of those things is that we take temperatures of every employee that comes into work on that, and we'll start coming in. And we have ordered thermometers for 2 or 3 times, and keep getting word that now all of a sudden they're not coming. So we're trying to track down the thermometers for that. But to know we're working in a place, and what we're concerned about is losing one person in the lobby, and then we've had 4 or 5 linemen that have been down there, and we've lost a whole crew, and multiple crews, and then we have a storm that comes through. So right now our goal would be we're going to move into the new lobby Tuesday after Memorial Day, and then we'll be open it back up, and we'll be target is to be back to normal with work at that point, with social distancing and some of it. And I'll keep y'all up to date on what we're going on there. TDA offers a scholarship every year. We've had several employees that have won that scholarship. And if you remember, Bruce's other daughter won it when she went to college. And his second daughter, Mallory Milliken, has been recognized as a TDA scholarship recipient. So congratulations to Mallory and to Bruce and Heather on that. While we have canceled the luncheon for those recipients, she'll still get the check in the mail, Bruce. The check's in the mail.
Ryan, may I add, an outstanding member of the Mayor's Youth Council.
Okay, good job, good deal. Thank you. Updates on statewide, just so y'all know, when there's from Team EPA, the governor's office reached out, for full disclosure to y'all, the governor's office reached out to the 10 FARC members. That was the original 6 of us utilities that they got into the broadband business, and asked if they were to drop legislation and allow us to go out into county, how quickly can we serve the whole county that surrounds us. And we let them know he's about 5 years too late on that. But, so anyway, that was a big ask, and I think what they've done now is added more money to for co-ops and such to try to expand. And I think there's they've lacked some of the standards for federal money for co-ops to go after as well. Another one of the things that we were looking at, the governor's office, after he made that plea with the Public Utility Commission, and then understood that did not govern electric utilities, he made a request of Team EPA as well as TECA to find out what utilities were doing about disconnects. So the governor's office was looking at that as well. Some of the things that TVA is doing to help, the first thing that they passed was the Public Power Support and Stabilization Program. That's where they set aside $1 billion to help with wholesale power deferral. I was hoping initially that was going to be some of it was interest free, and then later become an interest accruing loan. But it is all interest bearing, but it's at TVA's rate of borrowing. We, because of our cash position, did not qualify for this month. We'll look at that again next month and make a decision whether it would make sense for us to do that or not. And then, as I talked about, TVA did regulatory flexibility where they're allowing for us to do certain things and pass certain policies at the board level and then let them know after the fact. The third thing they did was the Community Cares Fund. They set aside $2 million to be spread out. And the minimum amount each LPC would get would be $10,000. Based on our size, we get $25,000. So we really didn't want CDE to be advertising and pushing for a fundraiser, and so we partnered with United Way. So United Way, within the next week, I believe, will be starting a campaign where they're raising money for people to help pay their bill. Whatever we raise through that, we can turn into TVA, and we'll be dollar-to-dollar matching up to $25,000. Community Action already handles who gets money and how people get money to pay the utility bill. We already have a relationship. So United Way would be the face of that fundraiser, and then donate that money to Community Action as well. The other, I was talking about the minimum bills. So they've got a Back to Business program, and this is for the B, C, and D customers. These are the larger customers. So we're looking at Austin P has shut down, and Train shut down. I don't know how long, it's a couple of weeks, I believe, is all they shut down. So we will look at their load profile and see if it warrants an application to TVA for some help on their minimum bills. And this is, TVA will pay for, actually pay for part of this. And it's one of those things, if we don't do it, sometimes it's cheaper for a company not to go back to work until the next month. So this will be encouraging. If it's in the middle of the month, regardless, go back to work, and then we help them on the backside. Train has already gone back to work, from my understanding. I just don't know if Austin P's load profile will want to.
Hancock they're served by CEMC, correct? Hancock.
Yeah, so CMC is dealing with this with a lot of the customers. Bridgestone, Hancock, I don't remember if LG's direct serve or not. But if it's direct serve, then TVA will deal with those customers directly. But, CMC affected more so than we are on this one. The last thing that they recently announced was the investment credit program. So we have two customers that get an investment credit. This was a program to encourage businesses to grow and expand their business. So Train and Shiloh Industries are getting an investment credit, and it amounts to about 10% of their monthly bill. With that investment credit, you have to, each month, or each review period, which is a year, you have to show some growth. And if you start laying people off, or your usage starts going down, then you are no longer eligible for that credit. So they have waived that feature for a year, so that even though the usage may go down, they will still get, they won't get the investment credit they originally contracted for, but it will still come to about 10% of their bill. And we have, like I said, we only have two customers, and that will not cost CDE anything. That will be all through TVA. And then the other thing, the last thing that TVA has done to this point for us is we have a comprehensive services program. And this is where we put $28,000 aside. TVA will match $28,000. And then if we do home inspections, we do energy audits, or we need TVA engineer to come in, it goes towards this comprehensive services. We've done a lot of work with the school system on this. They're going to waive our last 3 months of billing for that, because their program managers are not traveling right now, so we're not able to use the CSP, so they're actually giving us a credit which amounts to about almost $7,000 that will not be billed for. At APPA, I've told some of y'all during the budget meeting, we sent out the news release, but we were awarded the RP3 designation. That's Reliable Public Power Provider. There are over 2,000 public power providers in the United States, and only 278 hold this distinction, and we hold the highest distinction at the diamond level. So it's good for 3 years, and for the past 9 years, the first one we got was at the platinum level, was one below. We missed it, the diamond by a few points. And the last 2 times we've applied, we've received the diamond recognition in that. So we're really proud of our employees for that, and I think it shows our commitment to reliable public power. There's some stuff down there on what APPA is doing, fighting for some money for us. And a lot of the programs that are out there, some of our employees have heard about money that we're going to be getting from the state and the federal government. And while co-ops are eligible for a lot of that money, unions are not. So that's just me whining a little bit there. But that is all that I have, Chairman.
Okay. We are going to go into executive session, but before we do, call the mayor for any comments he may have for the benefit of everybody who's participating at the moment.
He had to leave the
Oh, he
meeting.
did?
Uh-huh.
Well, then we
Yes.
won't hear from the mayor. And we will go into executive session.